What's up, Hoopers, and welcome to Triple Threat. We are in the midst of the play-in, baby, which means the playoffs are right around the corner. And even though there's only been one day of the play-in so far, there is so much to talk about, especially if you stayed up late last night and you were watching the Golden State Warriors do what they do best. I will have Brad and Zach in the building with me to have that conversation a little later on. But first, I want to open today's show with a mini rant. It's a rant that I've had time and time again, but it's the gift that keeps on giving because Kevin Durant, once again, is in the news. Now, no, it's not because he's been traded or another coach from the Phoenix Suns has been fired or even because the Suns are in the playoffs or the play-in right now fighting for a playoff spot. It's because of social media. Yes, Kevin Durant and social media, the gift that keeps on giving, but I'm actually on KD's side, as I've been a few times actually when his name has been brought up in conversations when it comes to the world of the NBA and the NBA discourse. So Kevin Durant was on Twitter or X, whatever the kids are calling it these days. I'm calling it Twitter forever. And there was a thread that was kind of going around and it started with, so this was his response. He says, "So I tweet, big deal, arrest me." He does. He tweets very often, but this was in response to a initial tweet. Here's the whole transaction, if you will. It started with somebody saying KD managed his career so bad, man. And there was just a lot of conversation and somebody brought up Twitter and said he was making burner accounts on Twitter during his prime years. A response to that was, and he was averaging 35 in the playoffs while doing it. Kevin Durant then laughed, and then somebody said, "You're just proving the original's point by replying to this." And Kevin Durant ultimately said, "So I tweet, big deal." Yeah, big deal. I mean, are basketball players, are athletes, are public figures not supposed to have lives? Are they not allowed to do things in their free time that you and I do on a regular basis? Is Kevin Durant not a great basketball player, not a Hall of Fame basketball player, not an MVP, not a world champion, not an Olympic gold medalist because he tweets? I mean, look at some of his accolades here. 2-time NBA champion, 2-time finals MVP, 3-time Olympic gold medalist, 2014 NBA MVP, 15-time All-Star. He's going to go down as one of the greatest basketball players of all time. And I'm supposed to believe because he tweets, because he claps back at his haters on social media, because he once upon a time had a burner account, that his career is tarnished? That his career has been mismanaged? Let's not even get into his portfolio as a businessman. Let's not even get into his net worth, which I think is $500 million at this point. Twitter is now the basis of whether or not somebody is successful or not successful. It's Kevin Durant. I understand that the cool thing is to hate on KD, and the cool thing is to call KD this. He's a troll. He's soft. He's that. He's a ring chaser, blah, 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 blah. But there comes a point in time where facts should matter and numbers should matter. And can we throw those accolades up one more time? And there is nothing you can say. There is nothing you can tell me when it comes to what he has accomplished as a basketball player that to me would then erase all of the things that he has done because he tweets and because he claps back. Let's be honest. Let's be serious. The accolades of Kevin Durant speak for himself. Everything he's accomplished on the court speaks for itself. The eye test speaks for itself. Let's not let Twitter make people believe that that is the make or break of the legacy of KD. Once again, can I get those accolades on the screen one more time? Just to remind everybody before we close this out. This is the legacy of Kevin Durant. Not this. Cut it out. It's ridiculous. Leave KD alone. He's not even in the playoffs. He's got bigger fish to fry. Stop it. It's ridiculous. But what's not ridiculous is that we are in the midst of the best time of year in the NBA, and we have a lot to talk about when it comes to the two games that were played last night, and we're going to look ahead to the games that are going to be played tonight. And in the midst of that, we're going to talk about the play-in, and does it need to be revived? We'll discuss it all right after the break. Welcome back to Triple Threat, everyone. Ashley, Brad, Zach, the usual gang, and we made it. The postseason, everyone. And I know Zach is thrilled after last night. If you didn't know, he is our resident Orlando Magic fan. Please don't. What are you, OJ? What are you doing?
That's the first thing I thought when I saw him out there.
I got to put the glove on because it's no time for games anymore. Like, it's time to really get down to business. The Magic were in the playoffs for the 7th seed. Jeez. And this is the show. Like,
you're not going to be there for long. Congrats on last night.
We mean business. Jordan Brand right here for the glove. Like, we're not playing around.
Jordan Brand is not a sponsor of this show, Zach. So let's put the branded glove down. Yeah, but to Brad's point, you're extremely excited about having to go into the torture chamber that is known as a TD Garden to face the Boston Celtics. Can you explain why for the people?
So I honestly wanted the Celtics over the Cavs.
Insanity.
And maybe call it just the craziness in the fandom situation of it, but I feel better about our odds about facing the Celtics than I would for the Cavs. I think we are going to push the Celtics. I'm not saying we're going to win, but I think we will take them to the brink, beat them 2 times in the regular season. They beat us just 1 time. The first time we beat them in December, we didn't have Paolo or Franz playing. We had Trevelyan Queen and all these kind of guys getting big minutes. I like where we're at. We shot just 20-something% from 3 last night, but that's okay. We play defense. Defense wins championships.
I just want everyone to
Between
know
the lines.
because everyone's always saying that I'm a delusional Knicks fan.
I didn't say we're gonna win.
Nobody's more delusional than this.
I didn't say we're gonna win.
Listen, with preferring the Celtics over the Cavs, it's like, do you want death by grizzly bear or shark? You're dead either way.
Bear gives you a better option.
You're dead either way. You're dead either way. But I at least hear what Zach's saying in terms of, we saw that the Magic can really defend last night. Certainly.
I feel like we always knew that.
Certainly, though. I know, but at least it's something you can hang your hat on. But there's no possible way, with the amount of shooters that Boston has, that Orlando has even a prayer of keeping up offensively.
Well, let's dive into what happened last night. If we can go ahead and get the game summary on the screen one more time. It was underwhelming, to say the least. It got somewhat interesting at some points of the game, but the Orlando Magic did what Brad and I said they were going to do, and that is lead with their defense, lead with their size. And also, one thing that I made note of, and this is exactly how the game kind of unfolded, was the Hawks and their defensive lapses, if you will, just made it really easy for the Magic to get going offensively, because, Brad, to your point, they're not always known, we spoke about this yesterday, they're not known for their offense, this lethal offense that they have constantly. They're more of a defensive squad, but the Hawks just made it so easy for them to get points in the paint, to get looks at the basket from the three-point line, although they didn't shoot well from the 3. The rebounds were absolutely phenomenal. That goes to their size. It was just kind of an attack in every single way that you could imagine it would be, and the Hawks were kind of, Trae Young couldn't even help them at that point. And he was ejected later on.
The Hawks are an appetizer, even for the Magic. But what they were able to do last night in the specific context of a very inferior team in the Hawks is they got going in the open floor. They got some easy baskets. If they open the game up, they have a fighting chance. They do not have enough half-court creation because Paolo can't shoot, Franz can't shoot, relatively speaking. They can have their nights, but they're not guys you're going to depend on to create consistent half-court, tough, contested buckets. So if you're turning teams over and your defense is ramping up the pressure and Cole Anthony plays out of his mind and you can get into the...
It was the Cole Anthony game last night.
It was the Cole Anthony game.
Yeah.
You can have a chance against a team like the Hawks, obviously more than a chance. But Boston's not going to give them the opportunity to be out in the open floor. They're not going to be creating careless turnovers. They're not going to be smothering Boston to death where they're getting bad shots at the end of shot clock and be able to rip and run on rebounds. They're not going to be in the open floor as much. And if they're not in the open floor, if they're trying to create offensively in the half court against that Boston, the Magic are going to put up a fight. They're a tough team. They're a competitive team.
Preach.
But actually, I would be actually surprised if they won a game. It's going to be one of those series where, like, it's going to be one of those series where, like, there's going to be some 6-point games, I think, but they're not winning a game.
Do you want me to get you a magic-colored broom for the show?
It's not going to be a sweep, Brad. What's going to happen, I'm not predicting which game, but early in the series.
Well, at least you kept it singular. You're hoping for a game.
Gentlemen sweep.
You're going to hop on social media. You're going to be scrolling your timeline. You're going to hear, oh, Orlando Magic, Orlando Magic. Orlando Magic.
In the first quarter of a game. In the first quarter of a game.
I'm honestly rooting for the Celtics for that reason alone. I never want to hear this song again. Between him and Jacqueline.
Zach sings. If they win a game, then we can get that on the show.
On the show, Brad. I never want to hear this song.
We're not going to get swept.
Gentlemen sweep.
We are not, and it's going to go 6 or 7.
Wow.
Zach.
Come on, Zach.
The Celtics to the brink. Hey, Paolo is going to just show.
Someone's going to be pushed to the brink, but I don't think it's going to be the Celtics.
Stage,
I'm hoping you're right.
He is a top 10 player in the league, and Franz is going to.
Paolo, top 10.
Yeah, he's going to show I'm a top 10 player. What is
happening right now? What is happening?
Average 20, average 29 over the post All-Star break.
The Magic win a play-in game. The Gators win the championship, and Zach just goes off to the deep end. Before we move into what I think was the better of the two games last night.
You think?
Just want to put that out there, Zach. Before we get into Grizzlies and Warriors, real quick, obviously, watching that game, you can see that there's no help for Trae Young on that Hawks team. So if the Hawks fail to make the playoffs, Brad, who should either the Hawks pair with Trae Young, or where is Trae Young likely on the move to?
This is really, really tough because, you know, the Hawks went out and made a little move to get some of their money back on DeJounte Murray and picked up a hidden gem in Dyson Daniels. And they've actually outfitted him with Zach Ricochet through the draft. And then Jalen Johnson, when he comes back, they have actually done their level best to surround him with the sort of perimeter support staff defense that he needs to exist in somewhat of a competitive environment, because he's a guy that has to be covered for. And in today's NBA, it is very difficult to have a guy that is so vulnerable that you've got everybody else on the court covering for them defensively. For as much as Trae Young does offensively, they gave up DeAndre Hunter, they gave up Bogdanovich. They have basically moved into this two-way wing system where we're going to support you defensively, but Trae now has to be pretty much the bulk of the offense. Jalen Johnson was coming around. But in terms of who they're going to bring in that I think is actually going to move a needle, I don't think anyone. And you're really in the middle of a Trae Young dilemma because I don't think you can bring in enough. They've tried organically through the draft and through developing young players like Jalen Johnson to at least give him somewhat of a defensive infrastructure to survive in. But they can't take him to that next level with who they can bring in. And if you can't do that, you start looking at trade market, and that really tells you your value. What do teams want from you? What are they willing to give for you? And I don't think the Hawks would have been opposed to trading Trae Young when they traded DeJounte Murray. The simple truth was they could just get more for Murray. With the amount of money that he makes, with the amount of offense that he demands in terms of ball dominance, there aren't a lot of teams who are interested in having Trae Young be the focal point of their team because, as we've seen, if he's the focal point of your team, you're going to the play-in.
Yeah. Well, listen, we'll keep an eye out for what happens with the Hawks. They're going to be facing either Miami or Chicago after tonight's play-in matchup. But let's go to the Grizzlies and the Warriors in what was a phenomenal game, but also one of the most poorly officiated games I think I've seen all season, if not the most poorly officiated game that I've seen all season. It was a close one. 121-116 field goal percentage. Steph Curry absolutely lit up the Grizzlies early, but the legend of playoff Jimmy is absolutely real or play-in Jimmy, I guess. It also applies to that because play-in Jimmy will hopefully turn into playoff Jimmy. But he showed up and showed out and did what the Warriors expected him to do, which is the reason they went and got him. Brad, I'll start with you, resident Warriors fan here. Outside of these questionable calls that almost cost you guys the game, there were some interesting calls that sent the Grizzlies to the line more than a few times. Pleased with what you saw?
Yeah, we got a phantom call on Jimmy Butler, and John Morant got hurt, so I'm not crying with the luck that we got.
Yeah, he did tweak his ankle, came back like a soldier.
We probably don't even win that game if John Morant doesn't get hurt. So we got our share of fortuitous breaks. It was exactly what I thought. I don't know why everybody was talking about last night's game like it was just a formality, like, oh, the Warriors are going to play the Rockets. Now, yes, they ended up winning, but the Warriors are not quite as good as people are trying to make them. We are trying to force them into the top tier of the title conversation, and they're not there. What they are is in the group of a lot of good teams with the Lakers and the Timberwolves and the Clippers. They're right in that group, but they're not with Boston and OKC and Cleveland, and we're trying to force them into it. They can beat any one of those teams. No, we have.
I don't think anyone's put them in that contention.
No, we have.
Do you
Everyone's so fired up on the Warriors.
They want them to be there so bad.
They want them to, but after what you saw last night, would you say in terms of potential to win, not the top three, not the top three, would you say top five?
I think they're all in the same. I really think every single team beyond, every team below OKC in the West and every team overall below OKC, Boston, and Cleveland is in the same group to me. They are. They are. Well, okay, we're eliminating Zach's Magic and probably like the Pacers and probably the Pistons. But listen, I could name you 7 teams right now that I would. Generally speaking,
I think the Warriors, the Knicks are in the
Lakers,
the Lakers,
the Timberwolves, the Clippers. Yes, absolutely. The Clippers are better than the Warriors.
It's all close.
This is what I mean. Everybody's trying to put the Warriors.
I don't believe in the Timberwolves as an actual
contender. Either way, it took 75 points from Stephen Curry and Jimmy Butler and a hurt Ja Morant to get out of the play-in. So we have got to realistically think about the Warriors as a team that everyone's going to do the same thing with the Rockets that they did with Grizzlies. They're going to go on pedigree. We're in a dogfight. If we get out of this thing, we'll be the skin of our teeth.
But could it be also just a matchup thing? We know that the Grizzlies and the Warriors, these types of games, Zach, they come down to the wire a lot of the times. These two teams play hard. They play fast. They don't like each other. There's a lot of history there in recent seasons. I personally, maybe I'm giving the Warriors too much of the benefit of the doubt. I don't see them having this much trouble with Houston. Houston's not as good, I feel like, despite what the record shows, as the Memphis Grizzlies are.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for sure.
Offensively speaking.
For sure. I think the Rockets are better. But I do think that, and I think it's like just because generally speaking, we love Steph and we enjoy seeing him do well. I know I do. And you bring in Jimmy Butler, so it's the cachet. You think, okay, this team's going to start to be a lot better. And they were better, and they have been better since bringing Jimmy in. But they're not, it's not going to be a cakewalk against the Rockets.
No. It's going to be just like last night.
I don't think it's going to be.
Skin of our teeth
I don't think it's going to be that.
Skin of our teeth.
A big lead. You have a big lead, and you think, oh, okay, it's about to be, okay, we're about to walk away with this. And then, no, the team will climb right back into it. Every single night. Like it's going to be a dogfight. Like they're not world beaters. The Warriors aren't.
The thing is it's true that the Warriors have gotten way better, but from where they were coming from, they were almost in the lottery. So no one's disputing that they're a really good team, but we're trying to pump them into somebody that like should be. They're favored. The Rockets are a 2 seed. They won 53 games. They're minus 200.
But the Rockets are more from when you look at how they've played. Their defense is what has been the most consistent aspect of their game, not offensively. They're not a team. They're a team that
defense is going to be a problem.
But the Warriors are a good defensive team as well.
Yeah, but listen, Steph Curry is having nightmares right now about Amen Thompson, potential defensive player of the year. He's plus 10.8 when he's been on the court against the Warriors this year. All the other starters for the Rockets, if you look at them, they're minus players in terms of point differential. Amen Thompson is one of the biggest X factors, not in this series, but across the playoffs for any team in any matchup. Steph Curry is going to have him blanketing him. Face guarding him, and it's going to be hard.
I do think it's going to be interesting, too, because Ime Udoka was the coach of that Celtics team when the Warriors and the Boston Celtics went at it in the finals. So that's going to be interesting, too, because he has a lot of experience playing against that Golden State team and coming out on top.
Golden State might win this series, and they might deserve to be favored a little bit. I'm not saying that I prefer the Rockets to losing to the Grizzlies and having to play the Thunder. I'm not, but we're way overdoing that. Like the Rockets are too young and the Warriors were going on pedigree. These are pretty evenly matched.
I think they're evenly matched. And again, Ime Udoka has a lot of experience in winning games against the Golden State Warriors. So it's definitely going to be a fun matchup to watch. Grizzlies, Houston would have been cool too because of the youth aspect of it, the storyline aspect. But that series hasn't started yet. We have the Heat and the Bulls playing tonight, and that is going to determine what happens in the East with the Atlanta Hawks and who their opponent will be. Nobody cares. Don't worry. We're not talking about that.
Force the Hawks and the Magic into it. Now
we're not talking about that. But what we are going to talk about when we get back is whether or not the play-in needs to be adjusted based on what we have seen unfold in the standings this particular season. We'll talk about it a little bit more in depth after this break. Welcome back to Triple Threat, everyone. Ashley, Brad, Zach, and we were talking about the play-in games last break, and now we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about the play-in as a whole. So, as we know, the play-in is fully underway, and there have been new conversations that have kind of arisen regarding the brainchild of Adam Silver, and that is, do we as fans and players still like the way that the play-in is constructed? Now, to dive deeper into this conversation, what is at the top of everyone's tongues, if you will, is that the Kings are 9th in the West when it comes to this play-in situation, but they finished 8 games behind the 8-seeded Grizzlies. So as we know, the play-in gets sold as part of the NBA package and things like that, and it's not going anywhere. But in a situation like that, is there anything that should be done? Or in the East, for example, where 8, 9, and 10 are all under 500. Now, to kind of put this into perspective, if you guys want to throw up the bracket of what the West looks like, going back to the bubble, this is where things get interesting, right? So the league launched the play-in concept in the bubble during the COVID year, as we know, but the rule was this: any 9th seed that finished with the season within 4 games of the 8th seed was then able to go ahead and compete in a play-in situation. So
is that true? I don't remember that.
I remember that.
It was different. It was within 4 games of the 8th seed. That was just the bubble. It has been since expanded that anybody through 7 and 10, so how you're looking now, 7, 8, 9, and 10, as we know, 7 plays 8, and the winner of that matchup earns the 7th seed in the playoffs. The loser then faces the winner of 9 and 10 in the matchup.
So in the bubble, 7 was in. There was no play-in for 7. It was only if 9 was
trying to get that last playoff spot.
4. Yes. Okay, I totally don't remember that.
So it was always 16 teams in the playoffs, but you had to finish within 4 games of the 8th seed to battle for the last spot in the playoffs. It wasn't an automatic 7 versus 8, 9 versus 10. So a lot of people are wondering, especially with going back to how the East looks, or even if you talk about the Kings and the Grizzlies, for example, people say the Grizzlies finished 8 games in front of the Kings and are still fighting for a playoff spot. Or if you go to the East, 8, 9, and 10 are all under 500. And that's where things get a little bit sticky. So knowing what the rules used to be, Brad, and knowing what the rules are now, do you want to go back to the bubble, or do you like how it is now?
You know, that's interesting. I had completely forgotten that. My thing with the play-in, and maybe this rule sort of that we're talking about, the bubble rule, maybe addresses this, but I love the top half of the play-in. I love that Golden State and the Clippers on the last game of the season are playing for their lives. For the last 2 weeks of the season, all these trying to get above that 6 threshold makes for March really to be a lot of important basketball. So I love the top end where you can't just say, you're in March and you're like the Grizzlies, we're clear of the Kings. We're not going to get higher than 7. They can basically cash in March. But because of the play-in line at 6, you really have something to shoot for to get that guaranteed first-round series. The bottom of the play-in is where I have the issue, because then you're a team like the Grizzlies that earned it all year in one game might have it taken away from them by a really inferior team. A lot of those bottom play-in teams don't even want to be in. The Mavericks, I think, if they were being honest, would say that we'd just rather be.
They should.
They may throw a play-in game.
Yeah.
So if you could design a system where you weren't so much punishing the team that finished at 7, I would be up for hearing that. But if you can't do that, I am in favor of the play-in because I err on the side of that fight for the 6th seed making last month games really important.
Zach, I mean, now, knowing what we know now of how the play-in looks and how it looked in the bubble, should a 9th seed even have the opportunity to get into the playoffs if they finish so much drastically lower than an 8th seed? Yes, technically you're both on the brink, but if you're an 8th seed and you're 10, 9, 8 games ahead of a 9 seed, why should you have to fight for your position when they're relatively not even close to you?
I mean, yeah, I think if you're an 8 seed and you lose a 7-8 game, and then potentially in the second game you got to go against the 9 seed and you lose that, and now you're not in the playoffs,
you would be mad.
Now you're upset and mad. But I think that, like, the bigger picture view of it, I like having more teams having a say towards the end of the year who still have something to fight for, and less teams theoretically that are trying to tank. I remember the bubble and how pumped I was for that, and seeing like the run that the Suns went on, trying so hard to be able to get to the playoffs and to be able to keep their push going, and then ultimately not working. And I was in Charlotte at that time covering the Hornets and trying to see where the Hornets going to be able to make it. So I think when you have those storylines of a team that's trying to make it at the last moment, like, that makes it fun and exciting. But if we really are going to do something, let's just wipe away the East and West and just do top 16 teams.
Thank you.
And then we still can create a play-in with the bottom 8 teams or so, and do a play-in for that situation to figure out seeding. But, like, let's really, like,
conferences are old news. Old news, man.
Conferences definitely are, because they're always lopsided. The East is still not what the West is in terms of competitiveness and things like that.
But people say this goes in cycles. We're on about a 25-30 year cycle.
The East is taking a while. Can we go back to the standings though for a quick second? Because here's where, for me, I can understand people being on the side of I hate this in terms of how it's currently constructed. Because my thing is Brad, to your point a little bit about how you like the last few days or the last few weeks leading into the play-in situation, you have teams that are really close trying to vie for those final spots, right? But here's my thing. If you're 8 games back, let's talk about the Kings. If you're 8 games back from the Grizzlies, and look, we're going to have a chance to get into the play-in and play for our spot anyway, you're kind of coasting as well. If you put a parameter on it like it was in the bubble, where you have to finish within 4 games to fight for your spot, you're getting those teams playing top-notch basketball down to the wire. Because what's stopping
bottom teams?
Yeah, those bottom teams playing great basketball down to the wire because they're trying to get within 4. If you know whether it's 10, 12, 15, you're going to have a chance to get into the playoffs regardless. Why would you even try? You start resting your guys, you start coasting, you start mailing it in down the stretch. I like the fact that there was, at one point, you had to be within this amount of games or you don't even have a shot to get into the playoffs. You don't even have an opportunity. Yeah. I like that. It adds more of a level of competition.
But then what do you do if you now don't have enough teams to get you the play-in, because you want to keep those games for TV rights and all those things? So if you don't have the parameters met to get you a game, to get you an 8 versus a 9 potentially, or a 9 versus a 10, how are you going to solve that?
Well, it'd just be one game. You'd get rid of it. Like, there just wouldn't be the one game. You know, the fundamental question here is, do you want the Grizzlies? Let's just take this year's example of and go off of that. Do you want the Grizzlies to have to be competitive down the stretch to earn their spot, or do you want the Kings to have to be competitive? Okay, but if you make it the Kings and they're 8 back, the Grizzlies no longer have to compete. They're in. There's not going to be a play-in. They're in. They're too far ahead. So I like...
But you're also competing to maintain your spot.
Yeah, but if you're 8 games up, whatever, and this would happen a lot.
If you keep winning, it creates a bigger deficit for the team below you to try to get in.
But once it's at a big enough deficit, which it would have been this year by March.
Right.
So by having to fight for that 6, I still like the upper end of it, because it's telling you, it's almost like in baseball, like, don't get to 2 strikes. Because if you get to 2 strikes, anything can happen. The ump can make a bad call. You get fooled by a pitch, anything. And that's really what the play-in is doing to Memphis. If we're using them as the example. Anybody that's going to, if the Warriors, you're messing with it. You let your season get to 2 strikes, and now you got to come down to 1 pitch, and maybe you get a bad call. Anything can happen. And I think Though I'd rather have the 6 and 7 team because those are good teams having to compete down the stretch. I'm getting much more competition out of my higher profile teams than having to see the Kings and the hobbled up Mavericks.
I don't know if the 8th seed is necessarily a bad team. Like the Grizzlies aren't a bad team.
In the West, it's not.
No, they're a team that was kind of the victim of circumstance in a lot of different ways, right? But
they're at the lower end of it, so they're having to fight.
Whether or not you had the Kings and the Grizzlies going at it, if that wasn't close enough, you still would have had 1 through 8, and it still would have been set. So I don't know. I would like a little bit more of a desirable performance from teams down the stretch because they know they have to get closer. But speaking of teams in the playoffs, or not in the playoffs, rather, the Phoenix Suns are in the news, and we're going to talk about exactly why. It's not for the reason you may think. Welcome back to Triple Threat, everyone. Ashley, Brad, and Zach here. And before the break, I talked about a team that was not in playoff or play-in contention, and that's the Phoenix Suns. They've been in the news for one reason or another. I opened the show talking about Kevin Durant being on Twitter. As we know, Coach Bud recently got his pink slip. Kevin Durant is no longer interested in being part of the Phoenix Suns organization. So for a place in the desert, it seems to be raining a lot in Phoenix.
Nice.
But we're going to
nice.
Thank you. I'll be here all week. We're going to add to that chaos, if you will, with Bradley Beal, because a report came out yesterday that Bradley Beal did not want to be compared to Jrue Holiday. It shocked the NBA world when a report came out that Coach Bud actually said to him at some point, "I want you to start playing like Jrue Holiday." And Bradley Beal allegedly, this is a direct quote, said, "Don't ever disrespect me like that. Don't ever tell me to play like another player." Now, the alleged response to the comparison blew the minds of a lot of NBA fans, media, given Jrue Holiday's Hall of Fame career and 2-time world champion situation and all the other things that he has going on for him. Well, Jrue Holiday has since responded to the alleged quote, and this is what he had to say.
I guess I have nothing to say because it's the first time I'm hearing about it. I think me and Brad are different players. I don't know how, and I also don't know what he meant by saying that. But we are different players. Brad is an elite scorer, and he's had somewhat of an off year. So I feel like just things are different. It's tough to go from where he was somewhere like in Washington, kind of experience that he's been going through. So I just know my people got to bring me in. You know, let me just do me, go out here and try to win as many rings as I can.
For people who didn't hear what he said at the end, he said, "I don't know why people got to bring me in it. Let me just do me and go out there and try to win as many rings as I can." Now, guys, I did ask Bradley Beal if this happened. And without going into too much detail,
please, we want the details.
He laughed it off and was like, "Yeah, okay. Not what happened." So that's what he said.
So wait, you're saying that Brad Beal said that exchange never happened?
He told...
Read between the lines. Read between the lines.
I will leave it there. But listen, I can understand. I believe we have a comparison of Jrue Holiday and Bradley Beal's careers. Not that this... right here, so seasons, Jrue Holiday has 3 on him, titles 2, playoff appearances 8 to his 6, All-Stars, Bradley Beal wins in that category, All-NBA wins in that category, All-Defense, Jrue Holiday is a beast with 6. But I don't even think it's the resume comparison. I think that this was trending also on Twitter. If Bradley Beal is offended at being compared to Jrue Holiday, that tells you everything you need to know about his commitment to winning. I actually didn't take what Bradley said as that. For me, I
allegedly
think I think that these guys are just ultimate competitors when you talk about athletes when they get to this level. And to them, it's disrespectful when you are of an upper echelon of player telling me to play like another player when I've been in this industry, I've been in my position, I've been successful at what I've done in some way, shape, or form for 13 seasons, but you're telling me that me as a person's not good enough, I gotta play like this guy? Like, the Suns already have a situation that was just chaotic, and the locker room was obviously broken. They didn't believe in Coach Bud, and now you're telling me to play like this guy? Like, no, I'm your player. I'm Bradley Beal. I'm an individual. Don't ever compare me to the next person and say he's better than you, so you need to play like him. That's probably how he took it.
Yeah, that tweet that we showed, like, I couldn't disagree with that anymore. Like, because number one, if this actually happened, Coach Bud is not comparing him to Jrue Holiday. He's saying, like, I want you to play like that. That's not a comparison. But any human out here, no matter what your work is, you want to be your own person. You want to be your own individual. Like, people are saying, like, oh, I'm not the next this. I'm me. So, like, be an individual and go about that way. And if Coach Bud did want him to play like Jrue Holiday, well, then maybe have combos like, we're going to scheme things up because I need this from you, Brad, to win. I need you to do that. I need you to do this. But there's no way anyone in their right mind would want to be told, hey, you see how he's doing over there?
And there's a way to word it. If he allegedly told him, I want you to play like Jrue Holiday, well, I'm Bradley Beal. I'm not Jrue Holiday. Now, if you would have said to me, Jrue Holiday and the Boston Celtics do this really well, like, I want to implement this into our system so I can get more out of you in X, Y, and Z, that's a different way of wording that. Don't ever tell me, like, I want you to be this. Like, no, I am my own person.
Yeah, I have some trepidation now acting like this actually happened. But let's say let's say that it did.
I'm not saying it didn't. I'm not saying it did. I'm just saying what I was told.
I think in general, if the context is, dude, we need Jrue Holiday and you're being Bradley Beal, like, he's better than you.
Then you should have went and got Jrue Holiday.
There's identity stuff here. There's players that I could see how someone would take offense to that. I think it's pretty normal in all of sports when somebody is fulfilling a particular role on a different team, like, say, somebody that's going to have to take a back seat on a team, like Bradley Beal, for instance, and they say, we want you to be the Chris Bosh of this team. We want you to be the Kevin Love of this team.
That's different.
I think if this did happen, I would have to assume that that's more of what Budenholzer was saying, was that on the Wizards, you're the top guy. Jrue Holiday's always been a guy that melded into any situation he was in, and he's generally probably trying to iterate the message. Bradley, we don't need you to be the guy that you were in Washington. We need you to be a Jrue Holiday, a fill the cracks, score on some nights, defend on others, a Swiss Army knife, not focal point of our offense guy. We're doing that in Golden State where they're telling Jonathan Kuminga, pattern your game after Jimmy Butler, cut, rebound, defend when he wants to be so I think there are comps that can give people a north star of how they're going to fit into a system. I wouldn't think that would be something to take offense to. But if you're already kind of on rocky terms, they wanted to trade Brad Beal. They took him out of the starting lineup. Now you're telling me be a different kind of player. Mm-hmm. All of this in context, it's like, dude, I'm sick of hearing this. I'm a good player. I'm an all-star.
Yeah.
I don't need to be, first trying to ship me out of town. Now you ship me out of the starting lineup. Now you're telling me to be somebody else. All of that added up. I could see, again, if it happened.
And also, if it happened. Also, look at the stats. Bradley Beal, given the situation that he is in Phoenix, is still putting up a nice stat line.
You know why he's putting up a good stat line? You know why? He's a Gator.
I was thinking Magic, right? I knew.
And on that, he was at the championship game. Yeah, he was. After the break, we are going to talk about rebuild mode. It is time for In Your Bag. And the question this week was, which team needs to go into straight rebuild if they fail to make the playoffs? We'll unveil the answers after this. Welcome back to Triple Threat, everyone. And before the break, I teased that it was time to dive into the bag, and that's exactly what we're going to do. And this week's social media question was, which play-in team needs to go into rebuild mode if they fail to make the playoffs this season? And your answers all over the map. So let's dive into the bag and pull out answer number one. the Hawks.
Yeah.
Do we agree or disagree?
What does a rebuild mean? Trae Young?
It means
I think it has to be.
rebuild the team, Brad. Whatever you want that to mean.
It means shipping Trae out of there for a rebuild. Like, because other than that, you're just that's a retool, right? Yeah. If you keep your star, you're not rebuilding. You're
really difficult situation because I don't think they can get much for Trae Young, and so that's tough. But yes, in a vacuum, they probably do need to rebuild. Can they? Is another question.
All right, let's dig into the bag again. What do we have? The Kings. Yeah. Interesting. The Kings have gone through several semi-rebuilds.
Yeah.
Adding players, taking players away, none of which have worked the way that they anticipated it would after that little surge of success that they had, relatively speaking. They've been trying to recreate that magic in some way, shape, or form, and it's just fallen short. So I could see Sacramento. It's just, how would you make that happen?
Because they seem stuck. Like,
they're
just like, okay, you had
now De'Aaron Fox is gone,
the work and the success that you did, and then now you get rid of Coach Brown. So I think you've already, in one shape or another, like, thought about a rebuild in one way. But like, what can they do?
Yeah.
Well, Sabonis is signed up for a while now, and there's already been reports this year that he wants to know where the team's going, which is the same thing De'Aaron Fox wanted to know. So don't be surprised if Sabonis is a guy that they try to move out, and then they'll really just be the Bulls of the West.
Wow.
Just Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan run it. They should go get Lonzo Ball, maybe Kobe White.
Oh my gosh.
Vucevic, just run it totally back.
Let's dig into the bag again. What do we have here? The Miami Heat.
Yep.
I mean,
yeah. Well, you're gonna listen.
That's obvious, but
you're gonna be hearing Kevin Durant's name a lot in Miami.
Man, the Heat fans that I know,
don't even think he can say
constantly talk to me. Oh, we're getting this guy. We're getting that guy.
And it never happens. And Pat Riley's like, "Yeah, jokes on y'all. We're not doing that."
We're getting KD, and I want nothing more because I do not like the Heat, and their fans just annoy me. I want to see a rebuild where they get no stars. I want them to go through another summer of losing tonight, see their season go away.
They should lose tonight,
and then we have to do this song and dance when they land nobody.
Listen, they should lose tonight and think about that pick and stop trying to win meaningless games to prove that Heat culture is a thing. But that's a different conversation. Let's dig into the bag again, see what we got here. If you're picking the Hawks, you don't know basketball. They're one of the youngest. They're one of the youngest cores in the league, and they own none of their picks. Why trade Jalen Johnson?
Nobody said trade them.
If they're all under 25 years old, Trae is also only 26.
Yeah, but there's a lot of evidence that Trae is not the guy that is going to be the North Star of a competitive team. They had that one run. We have seen now subsequently that was very context-driven. And the bracket broke right, and they had a kind of catch lightning in a bottle situation. It's not something. There's enough evidence now that Trae Young is not. So I didn't hear anybody on this show mention anything about trading Jalen Johnson or Risa Shea or we all love Dyson Daniels. Nobody said that. What we said is maybe start building around those guys instead of Trae.
The rebuild happens without Trae. Yeah, like
I need the Funk Master.
The problem is I just don't think Trae has any value. Whoever said this is right. Jalen Johnson would have a lot of value.
Well, let's dig into the bag again. What do we have here? I feel like the Mavericks really need a superstar for the future. How long can they rely on aging superstars like Kyrie and AD who struggle to stay healthy?
I hate that we actually have to talk about the Mavericks like they need a superstar. They only need a superstar because they gave away an all-time. I just hate that we have to even talk about this as like a normal. They did this to themselves, and they need to go fully and just sort of like cut their losses. I believe they need to trade Anthony Davis. They need to get something for him because Kyrie Irving is not going to be back until at least halfway through next year. Next year's cooked too. The Western Conference is too good. So
let's
the Mavs need a superstar. Unbelievable. You think?
Let's pull up that last one. The only ones that don't to me are Golden State, not yet. Memphis, Orlando, still young, and Dallas just not healthy right now. Sacramento, we said this already. Low key may need to rebuild the most that they can get their biggest return for what they have anyway. I feel interesting. Well, look, we're gonna see which of these teams don't make week, the playoffs, because the play-in continues throughout today and tomorrow. And next week, we are going to dive into what the playoffs actually look like. For myself, Brad, and Zach. This has been Triple Threat. If you missed any of this episode, don't worry. Scan this QR code and you will be able to find our full episode on YouTube. And we will be back next week when the playoffs are fully underway.